Welcome to the Magdalene Voices, giving voice to those silenced for centuries through sacred conversations with beautiful, illuminating souls. I am your host, spiritual business coach, mentor, catalyst, and facilitator, Maria Saraphina. I serve experienced, soul-driven, heart-based spiritual entrepreneurs, business owners, Magdalene's rising, and radiant beings just like you with the expansion and growth of yourself and your business. Aligning you with your deep inner truth, bringing to life that which you're here to birth, and supporting you in expressing your soul's divine purpose through your being and your doing in this lifetime. If you haven't already, I highly encourage you to join my newsletter to stay connected and updated. You can do so on my website, mariasarafina.com, where you can also find previous episodes and their show notes. And if you have ever wondered about your Magdalene connection and calling and whether you are a Magdalene, I invite you to download the free Magdalene Blueprint I've created for you. Go to mariasarafina.com/AYM to get it. Also, if you're a soul-driven, heart-based spiritual entrepreneur, check out my show and podcast, Spiritual Business with Maria Saraphina. It's designed to inspire you, empower you, guide you, nurture you, and activate you. You can find it on YouTube as well as everywhere podcasts are being broadcasted, or click the link in the show notes. As always, I encourage you to listen with an open heart and an open mind and take only what serves you and leave the rest. Here is today's episode. Welcome, Radiant One. Today we are going to be diving into what it means to be living a guided life, or what it means to move through life being guided. It is something that I have been experimenting with for quite a while. And I want in this episode also to share some of my experiences, some of my discoveries, so that you may see it within your own life, and that you may lean in and trust, not even trust, but lean into it in your own life. Before we dive into this, I wanna say that even with all of my woo-ness, even as spiritually open as I am still very much a skeptic. I am still very much full of discernment, and I am still very, very much a recovering control freak. And I don't know if you saw it, but one of the recent episodes on my other podcast, the Spiritual Business Podcast, show and podcast, dealt with these myths about having a spiritual business. And as I was preparing for this episode, another one came up. I knew that more was going to come up because there are all these different myths about having a spiritual business. And I knew that more was going to come up. And just as I was sitting down to start shooting this one, that skepticism came up. Because I think that there's this notion that we as Magdalene's rising, as soul-driven, heart-based spiritual entrepreneurs, or not even entrepreneurs, but just understanding that we have a human life, but we are souls and spiritual in nature. There's this understanding that we somehow then are not skeptical or discerning, or and that we just run through life or walk through life with these blinders on, not open or aware of what's going on around us. And so before we dive in, I want to say that I'm very much still that. And I think that it's not about getting rid of that. It's not about getting rid of the skepticism. It is more a process of expanding into the love and the joy, and using your skepticism or your discernment as a tool in your process, and noticing where that comes from. Like, so if you are someone who's like a deep, like skeptical of everything and anything, notice where that is coming from you, within you. Is that coming from a fearful place where you are actually using that as a barrier to keep yourself from being reunited with what you are in truth, then it is something for you to look at. Or is it coming from a healthy boundary, quote unquote, place where it's like, let me just check in and see, and you're actually moving in rhythm, in flow with the universe or with God or with source, and your skepticism is not so much grounded in fear or worry, but it's more a curiosity. And I think that you may understand the difference. I want you to not necessarily to think the way through, like with the difference between those two, but I want you to sense the difference, like know the difference from within. And that's actually one of the benefits of having of living a guided life. And so benefits of living a guided life. I think that I have now prepped the episode enough so that you understand that I am a healthy skeptic. I have discernment, and I'm also, like I said, a recovering control freak. And I've mentioned this probably plethora of times already on this show and podcast, that surrendering for me is a constant practice. And surrendering is a constant practice for me, and it also becomes easier and easier. I'm not sure or I don't know if I will ever just not have to surrender. We'll just have to see. Like I said, I've been doing this experiment. I wanted to see what would happen if I followed all of the internal guidance and all of the nudges or the messages or the images that I was receiving. I wanted to see where that led me or where that took me. And that's because if I am to know, or if I know, and I do know, that I'm part of a higher purpose, a higher cause, a higher self, if I am spiritual in my nature and then having this human experience, I wanted to, quote unquote, put my money where my mouth is. Like that, I wanted to really, really integrate and implement that in my life. And that's where the surrender comes in. So like I said, I've been experimenting and implementing, following guidance. And I already mentioned a few of the ways that I receive my internal guidance, or intuitive guidance, or whichever way you want to call it. And I want to share that there, to me, like, because we have as you have all of your senses, you already also have the clair version of that. And as you work on, unveiling yourself, is what I call it, lifting the veils that are hindering your sight, that are hindering your sensing, that are hindering your knowing, that are hindering your hearing, or listening, that are hindering your all of your senses. You become more and more clair. You become more and more clear, and you can hear or see or sense or feel or know or even move. I've had experiences where my body physically has been moving towards different things without me knowing why, but I just felt called to do these different things, and later found out that they were mudras, or that they were mantras, or that the sounds were coming out that I didn't know, but I was guided towards doing that. And so if you're someone, and I can't speak for everyone, it is my personal experience, and it's in the experience of those that I work with, that the more you work with your senses, the more of them become accessible to you. So you may start out being someone who's very visual, and you may see images Or you may be someone who hears it, who hears voices or messages, or you may be receiving your nudges from within your heart, and there's like a sensation of it. It might be a feeling, or it might be just a knowing. I say just a knowing because for me that's where this started. For me, it started with a knowing, which was extremely difficult because when you're in that moment where you know, but you don't know how you know, and the whole world is based in facts and things that you can see, hear, touch, and feel, and like smell like that, it's really difficult to be that one outlier that says, well, I know, and then you know. And as I began listening to that voice and trusting that voice, I began seeing images. I began hearing, I don't want to say voices because it's not necessarily, I don't have voices outside of myself that are talking to me. Others may have that. For me, it's more like it's like there is a voice or a message or something there. I can hear at times. I can hear, and especially if I'm not really listening, then it's funny because my clients will know that's when we sit in session and all of a sudden it's like I will have to say a lot. I have heard you. I will come back to it when I am ready to deal with it, or I feel like it's right or appropriate for the client and I to deal with this. So I've heard you because it just keeps, I keep hearing this like, say this, say that, and that's hilarious to me whenever that happens. And of course, or not of course, but to me it's also still crazy, but it is what it is, and I embrace it with all of my heart and all of my being because I love it when it happens. And not very often, but all the times it has a significance for the client, and that's just so beautiful. And for me, the nudges or the messages or the things that I receive usually now come in with a combination of things. So it can either be, like I said, like a voice, or it can be a knowing, or it can be a sensation, or it can be a movement of my body, like my back will straighten, or my fingers will move. I will be called to do something. And one of the I'm gonna do it so you can hear and see what happens. But very often, whenever I work with spirit or the universe or source, whatever you want to call it, my mouth does this. It's like I don't know why. It's like I just start doing this with my lips, and it's again, to me that's crazy, but it works. So that's how I do it. So those are that's my way, and it's really important for me to highlight that when I'm sharing this, I am sharing this as quote unquote my truth and the way that I have experienced it, and I do that so that you may either recognize how it is for you, whether it's the same or whether it's the complete opposite. I want you to really look for and listen for how this relates to you, because, and you've heard this a million times, having been brought in here, have you sat here and listening or watching this, there's a message here for you. And so it's about you to be discerning, skeptical, and also open and willing, and surrender into what is it that I'm here for? How come that I'm listening to that, and how can I use it in my personal life? Whether you are someone who is a Magdalene rising, as I see it, or spiritual entrepreneur, or but someone who doesn't have a business but go through your life doing your job and absolutely in love with that. So those were I mentioned the different ways that you can receive those intuitions. And I shared how the first one for me was the knowing, which was really difficult for me. And you may have the same experience. I guess maybe even, maybe it's even, no matter which one it is, like I can imagine, I remember the first time I for real heard voices, I was like, I thought that was, and once I realized that what that voice or they were telling me were like what I needed to hear that moment, it was like, oh, okay. And then you can start to follow. So I guess when you're at the beginning of your journey with this, and even down the line, because like I said, now it grows and expands. It's more and more and more. And I still have to when I receive those messages or nudges, there are still times where I have to lean into it. However, this brought me to, because that's really what I've been sharing has really a lot been about when I'm working with clients or with people. And the experiment that I've been trying or been doing is what would happen when I followed it in my personal life, not just my personal life, but also in my business, of course. But like whenever I would hear a guidance, then and follow that, then what would happen? And the first step, of course, is to become aware of, because so often as intuitives, we may be receiving a lot of impressions all the time. And so there's that piece of discernment in terms of when is it right or when is it not right. And so there's an awareness of, oh, this is an impression. This is something that I can choose to do. And then what happens if I choose to do it? And I want to start by sharing one of my recent experiences where it was like really, really, it was put, I don't want to say to the test, but it was really, became so obvious how, and I'm maybe giving everything away, and maybe you already knew this from the beginning, you started listening to this, is that how freaking awesome life and business is when you follow that guidance that you're receiving. And it's not to say that I haven't been doing it in the past. I guess this experiment has been to be way more conscious about it and way more, more conscious about it. To be like, okay, this is my proof over and over and over again, and seeing those results. So back in March, if you've been with me for a while, you may have seen this newsletter that I sent out back in March, when I, because of the pandemic that we were facing, and that we are still at the time of this recording facing, was moved to, or guided really, to go from California back to Denmark. And I remember watching on the news that the Danish government were literally telling Danish citizens that if they were abroad and weren't living there permanently, that it would be a great moment or a time for them to come back. And as I sat with that, and I talked to a few friends and decided, okay, this is probably the right thing. The first thing for me was to decide, when am I going to go back to Denmark? Because at that time there was flights in and out of everywhere, every time, like at every moment of the day, which is not the situation right now. And I was looking through my calendar, and I was looking at, this was a Friday that I made the decision. And then I was looking at days, like I was looking at maybe Wednesday or Thursday, but there was something, and this was more of a sensation. There was something within me that was telling me that would be too late. That would probably, because that was almost a week out, so that would not be a good situation. So I decided that I was going to leave on the Monday, meaning that I had literally 2.5 days to pack up my life and then get back. And what I discovered was, and this was only something that I discovered that on my trip, was that I had been looking at flights on the Saturday. I'd been looking at flights on the Sunday. I'd been looking at flights on the Wednesday and the Thursday. And what I now know, in hindsight, is that at the airport, I was meeting with other people who were also coming back to Denmark, having been called back. And they were telling me how their flights, they had been booked on flights from both the Saturday and the Sunday, and they had been postponed. So had I booked a flight on the Saturday or the Sunday, I would have been stuck in an airport and wouldn't have been able to go back until the Monday. So me being guided, or choosing to follow that guidance, I'm going to book it on Monday, meant that I was actually on a flight out of the US on that same day without any delays. Now I did have I did have an issue with I was flying through London, from London to Copenhagen, LAX, London, London, Copenhagen. And as I was on my way to the airport, or just before, as I was on my way to the airport, my flight from London to Copenhagen with the airline that I was flying was canceled. And of course, I tried to contact the airline, and there was nothing, they couldn't get through because of the situation. And then I jumped online and I looked and I thought, okay, where can I find another ticket? Because that was what I was being called to do. I went online and I found another ticket, and it was in a different airport in London. And if you know London, there's like 3 or 4 major airports, and I would have to go through from one to the other, and I would have to do that with a shit ton of luggage. But I chose to do that. When I got to the airport, the lady at the counter actually told me that they would have rebooked me. They would have found another flight for me. However, she would make sure that I would get refunded for the ticket that I hadn't received. As I was walking towards where you go through the security, I was approached by a young man who had overheard that my friend and I was speaking Danish, and had asked us what we were doing, because they were also on that flight, and they were also being rebooked, and they were being rerouted through Germany, Hamburg. And I told him what I had done, and then we parted ways, and then we went our separate ways, and that's it. What I found out later was that Germany was actually closing its border. Denmark had been closing its border, but Germany was also closing its border, meaning that had I chosen not to book my flight from London on my own through a different airline, most likely it would have been really, really difficult for me to come through Germany back to Denmark. Yes, there's flights, yes, there's cars, yes, there's loads of airplanes normally, but at this point in time, everything was shifting. And so I don't know how they did, and I'm sure that they're back in Denmark. I pray that they are. However, I know that had I not chosen to do what I did, what I was guided to do, then my travel or journey back to Denmark would have been way, way different. At the airport, I met plenty of people who told me that they had been, they'd had several canceled flights, that they had been sitting on airplanes when the flights had been canceled, when everything, and even as we sat waiting for the flight from London to Copenhagen, I saw them counting us. I saw them looking at us, and I knew that they were making a decision as to whether or not they were going to take off. And I just remember there was a young girl next to me. She was shit scared that we weren't going to take off, and I just told her, we are going to take off. This flight is going to take off. We're going to get back to Denmark. And we did. And so that's just one example of what, to me, living a guided life means, and the benefit of living a guided life. Another benefit of living a guided life is the peace and the calm with which all of this happened. The world, and I'm not saying, because I understand that there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of anxiety going on, and I did have to process for about 2 weeks when this first started. I did have to kind of process it, but I was never in a space of fear. I was never in a space of anxiety. Even going back, I was never in a space of fear. I was always in this calm, serene place, which to me is a result of the work that I have done throughout the years, many years now, and I continue to do on a consistent basis. The work of choosing love, which is not necessarily an easy choice. However, it is the right choice, and is one that I consistently choose to go with. So that's like another benefit. And I want to say, and another amazing, awesome outcome or a benefit of living a guided life. And this may seem really, really mundane, But remember that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so being human, the way to make your life miraculous or magical is by the love and the magic and the miracles that you infuse or imbue your life with. So as I share this, remember that this may seem really mundane. However, I wasn't due back in Denmark till later during the year, and one of the first things I did when I knew when I was coming back to Denmark was I went online to book a hairdresser appointment, and because by then my hair would not have been touched by a hairdresser for a very long time, and I have a hairdresser or stylist that I absolutely love and adore. She just does wonders with my hair. So you will this is the undone version, so you'll just wait and see. You'll see. I'll share it on social media. But I booked a hairdresser's appointment for May 1st. May 1st. Because that was like 2 days after I was supposed to be back. And coming back to Denmark, I knew I was coming back sooner. I literally jumped on and I went in to book another appointment because I wanted to have my hair done as soon as I came back to Denmark. However, something told me not to cancel my original appointment. And by the time that I was back in Denmark, everything had been shut down. Like everything. We were like, the grocery stores are open, the pharmacies are open. That's it. But the hairdressers had been closed down for 2 weeks. I then went online and booked another appointment, assuming that they would open up after the 2 weeks. I still did not cancel my original appointment because something told me not to. And lo and behold, here we are. And last week when the hairdressers were allowed to start working or begin working again, the booking systems blew up and everything just crashed. There was no way you could get on. And I think that the earliest appointment that one can get, I think my sister got one, which is like at the end of May. And I still have my appointment. So I'm sharing, again, this is, to me, is like, that's proof of like, I'm being guided to this. I'm being guided to this. I'm being guided. And so I'm sharing this because you may feel guided in an area that seems insignificant or ridiculous or, those two things, and still feel guided. And I'm here to encourage you to follow that nudge or that guidance that you're receiving, because what I see now, and this is one of the things that I've wanted to gather, I wanted to gather proof. And the more I do that, the more in awe and the more in love with who I am and what I do and what we are all part of, because we're all part of this magnetic force, this source of love, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And we're always being guided. It's just a matter of how much we choose to listen, how much, and when I say choose, I'm not bringing in guilt or shame, because there are times that we cannot listen. There are times when we cannot hear. So it's about choosing over and over and over again. I want to listen. I want to hear. I want to be guided. And right now, I didn't think that I was going to do this, but right now when I feel guided to share my daily prayer with you, I have a daily prayer, and that's evolved over the years. When I first started out, this was my prayer. It was, "Dear God, help me clear my mind so I can hear your voice. Help me open my eyes so that I might see with your vision. Help me speak my truth so that I might so that I might be your voice in this world. Help me soften my heart so that I might feel our divine union. Help me use my womb for growth, creation, and expansion. And I give you my hands and my body in service to do your work in this world. Amen." And over the years, that prayer has evolved from asking for help to an outside source into reclaiming that I am source and that you are source. So that now my prayer is, I clear my mind so that I might hear your voice. I open my eyes so that I might see with your vision. I speak my truth so that I might be your voice in this world. I soften my heart so that I might feel our divine union. I use my womb for growth, creation, and expansion. I give you my hands and my body in service to do our work in this world. Amen. And with that, I just want a brief note on womb, something that I recently discovered that was very revelatory for me when I sat down with Anna Otero, whom you'll be hearing from really soon. Beautiful, beautiful Magdalene. She shared how everyone has an energetic womb, whether or not we are gendered, whether or not we consider ourselves male, female, binary, non-binary, all of the different shapes. We all have an energetic, creative womb where we create from, where everything is brought through us into the world through. So when you say, I use my womb for growth, creation, and expansion, know that if you are someone who is recognizing yourself as a male or binary or non-binary or any of the different I don't want to say genders, but any of the different ways that we can recognize ourselves as, know that's you can have an energetic womb or a creative space from which you manifest through in this world. Finally, I want to say that in terms of being guided, when we choose to start listening to that guidance, there may be things that we do not want to hear that will come up. For me, there is something that has been calling me for quite a while that I was not really willing to listen to because I thought I had my business settled in the way that I wanted it to. My guides, love, God has also been calling me to rise and to serve in different ways. So I am still going to be a spiritual business coach. I don't think that's ever going away. Maybe it is, I don't know, because I love what I do with my clients. However, there is something more that is coming through me, and there is a different expression that is coming through me. And I'm going to be sharing more of that with you in the coming episodes. I didn't realize that I was going to talk for this long. This is going to be a long, singular episode, and maybe that's the new form that this is coming in. I would love to invite you or encourage you to do one thing, and that is to start seeing the quote-unquote proof, your proof in your life of how you're guided. Start with that, and then if you are willing, start implementing or experimenting with that internal guidance that you receive. Try following it. For me, like I said, it's literally down to if I'm being called to go left or right, if I'm called to buy this or that, if I'm called to reach out to that person or that person, if I am called to go to bed or wake up, if I'm go to drink this or that. It's everything, and it's such a delicious experience to do, in my opinion. Also, I would love to hear from you. Would you please share in the comments below this video or this audio, wherever you're listening? Go to the show notes. There's a link to the episode, and I would love to hear from you. Share with us how you see your life being guided, what your experience with being guided, living a guided life, and the benefits of having that guided life is. That is what I had for you. I love you. Take care. That is what I had for you in today's episode of the Magdalene Voices. I hope it served you well. If you're listening to this via podcast, know that there is a link to my website, mariasaraphina.com, in the show notes, and you can go there for all the deeds and the details. Finally, I hope that you will take a moment to either leave a comment or a review or share it with a friend or on social media if you feel that it served you.